Yeah.
Welcome back, Portugal Junkies.
Hello.
We are super excited because today we actually have a guest on who I'm so happy has agreed to say yes and come on the pod today. A little background. So we've had a lot of you reach out to us and say, I love following your story, but hello, y'all don't have kids. And I don't know how to equate your experience to like what we're considering, because like the biggest thing that keeps me from going abroad or moving to Portugal even is that I have kids, and I have adult kids even that are not going to be able to come with us if we were to choose it. And so the ask was, why don't you interview some different family structures that have done the same things that you have? And so we have asked Heather to join us today, and we're so excited. She's going to give her perspective a little bit about what her family structure was like and the experience of deciding to move, and now that she's here, what that's like. So yes, so welcome, Heather. We are so excited.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm so thankful that you said yes and are willing to come on and share your stuff with us. So
Absolutely.
So why don't we start at the beginning? Like, give us kind of the overall picture. Like, tell your moving abroad story for the listeners.
I would say it was a perfect storm, literally and figuratively. I am from Florida. I've been in Florida for 30 years, and just a few years before we decided to make this move, the hurricanes in Florida had been getting worse and worse, and the taxes and property insurance had been getting worse and worse because of the hurricanes. They're just jacking up prices, and our little neighborhood was getting flooded several times a year when hurricanes would come, and just the whole ordeal of like at least 4 times a year you've got to pack up everything inside, get all your supplies. Like, it's just big, it's a lot of work. So we came out to visit a friend here in Portugal, and I think it was 2021, and he had been here a couple of years, and he said, just come and visit, let's just check it out. We'd never been, so we're like, sure. We came and visited him. While we were here visiting him, a huge like Category 4 hurricane started coming right toward our home, and we were here. And we were not prepared because it wasn't coming when we came here, and then it was. So we had to call on our neighbors and our friends to please, batten down the hatches at our house. And it looked like it was going to be a direct hit, like devastating. It ended up hitting like 2 hours south of us, and that town, it was Fort Myers, got leveled, like completely ruined. Like they're still rebuilding years later. And so we were sitting there like terrified, and we're just thinking all of our assets, everything we own, everything that means anything, anything that is financially viable for us, our home, our cars, our boats, our kids, like all of the things could be just wiped away in an instant. And we're in our, I'm 50. And I just guess we're in a place where we were like, do we want to gamble every year that our entire life savings and life assets are going to be potentially taken away at any time? It's just, it was a lot. So being here in Portugal when that happened was kind of like, and we were talking to our friend here, he lives in Algarve, and he said, there's really no hurricanes here. There's fires occasionally because it's dry. And we just had this earthquake here in Portugal right now, of course, like months after I moved here, they had the first hurricane they've had in 15 years, but sure. Okay.
Yes. And close
not hurricane, earthquake.
Closer to you than it was to us by far, because we didn't even know it happened. So.
Oh yeah, we felt it. We definitely felt it. Like it shook the house, but coming from a hurricane, I was like, meh, and that was 4 seconds. Like, hurricanes are long, but anyways. So yeah, I just started the conversation of like, maybe there's other things we can do to not have to be so scared every year that our whole life is going to be turned upside down. And then of course there was a lot going on in Florida politically, with the governor just stripping away rights after rights after rights from, abortion bans to book bans to changing the history, like whitewashing the history in books and education. Was an educator for 17 years. So this was very important to me. And I was just kind of had it with the politics in Florida. Our oldest was in college already. Our youngest was 1 year away from college. So we were like, if we're going to move, we wanted to move somewhere that would be beneficial for them also. And my husband's grandfather was from Madeira, Portugal. So we have that connection. So he can get citizenship through bloodline. So we were like, if we are going to go somewhere, we talked about going to like the Cayman Islands. My husband is from Trinidad. Trinidad's not super safe right now, so we wouldn't go back there. But we had talked about some island life, but eventually we decided like we wanted to have the European experience and be able to have our kids be able to have the European experience. So because he can get the citizenship and the passport, really the EU passport is what we wanted. Portugal made sense, and for the kids also. So we thought, okay, we're going to put our house up for sale. We're going to see what happens and talk to the kids about it. We brought them out a year later, the next summer, to Portugal for the first time for 2 weeks. And we drove all around Algarve because we thought we were going to be in Algarve. That's where our friend was from. And we didn't find anything that felt like home. Nothing hit. We drove like literally coast to coast on Algarve, and it wasn't working. And so we were like, maybe Portugal isn't for us. Like, okay, that's fine. We can accept that. But then on our last 2 days, we were in Lisbon, and my husband remembered he had a friend who lives here in Ericeira, which is where we ended up. And he called her and he's like, what do you recommend? What are we doing? She's like, Portugal is for you. I know you guys. You're just looking in the wrong place. And she was right. She's like, you have to come to my town. You have to look in my town. I've been here 3 years. It's so great. And she was a realtor. So immediately I'm online, Idealista, looking for houses. And she looked at some houses for us, and we ended up in this house that we bought. We put our house up for sale. It sold before it even went on the market, like just by pure luck. And the guy who bought it
past year, Heather, was it like in 2023?
2020. Oh God, it's all a blur now. 2023. Yes. We sold our house in August 2023. Yeah. And the guy who bought it was in a divorce, and he was like, would you sell me your furniture? Because I will never be able to decorate a house like this. And my wife took everything. And I was like, actually, yes. And so we sold the house with the furniture, which helped a lot. We didn't have to move anything, and we got a little extra money to buy furniture over here. So it all just kind of like, everything kind of fell into place. We were able to sell the boats, sell the cars. We got an apartment for the last 8 months that we were in Florida before we actually made the move. My daughter, who is the youngest, she entered her freshman year that year. So we said we would stay through her first year of college to make sure she was like settled and comfortable and had made friends and everything. So it all just kind of fell into place, and it all kind of worked.
So you have 2 kids that are in college still in the US.
Correct. So my son is 21. He's a senior this year at FSU in Florida. And my daughter is 19. She's a sophomore at UF.
Nice.
So
we hope that she's doing well.
She is. Thank you. That was
your son as well, but specifically your daughter.
Yeah. So the only thing we were like hesitant about moving, like the only holdback, was the kids, obviously, because that's all you care about as a parent. That's all you worry about. Like, you want to be there should anything happen. And I think they were okay with it, even if they weren't. Like they said they were, because they knew that we were excited about it. They're very mature and nice in that way, but they said they were okay with it, and they gave us their blessing. And we luckily have a very, very strong network of friends in the city that we were in Florida. So we just kind of said, like, these are your aunties. Call them if anything happens.
Right.
So in May of this year, like, we moved in March, on March 20th this year. And then in May, just 2 months after we moved, like, the worst nightmare that you would think, the thing that you're worried about when you have kids and moving away.
Right.
Probably the
happened.
one thing that like you were really worried about happening ever when you decide to go across an ocean and leave your adult children behind.
And that's exactly what happened. Like the worst case scenario, the thing you never want to happen. My daughter, who was at the time in our town, she was staying in the apartment that we had still had there. We had planned to keep the apartment through the summer. So when she came home from college, she would stay there, be able to stay there. And our son was up in North Florida in an internship. And we talked to them every day, and she had not responded the next day. We talked to her the night before. She said she wasn't feeling well. She had said she wasn't feeling well a couple of days before. I told her to go to the doctor. She made the doctor's appointment, but then canceled it because she said she felt fine the next day. And then the next day she still was feeling bad. So I said, just go to urgent care, because now, of course, it's the weekend and doctors are closed. So I just go to urgent care. She went to urgent care. They tested her for strep and mono, and it was negative. So they sent her home. We talked to her that night, and she didn't sound good, but she was sick. So I was like, just get some rest, whatever. The whole next day, we didn't hear from her at all, which was very weird. And so I messaged my son, and I'm like, hey, have you heard from her? Is she on Snapchat at all? Like, are you seeing, is she just awake and busy, whatever? He didn't respond to me. And then I started like getting a pit in my stomach. Something's not good. And within 10 minutes of me thinking that, her two best friends messaged me and said, hey, Miss Heather, we haven't heard from you for a little while. Is everything okay? I got choked up about it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
So we, So I called my best friend in our town, and her house is like 5 minutes from the apartment. So I called her to say, hey, go check on her at the apartment. And when I answered the phone, I said, hey, and she said, hey, Heather, you talked to your son. She said his name. I'm not going to say his name, but she said, you talked to your son. And I said, no, he's not responding to me. Why? She goes, I'm here with your daughter. With the ER, the EMTs, they're doing everything they can. And that's what I heard. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, she said she's conscious. They're trying to find a pulse and see it. She's breathing lightly. So they're doing everything they can. They're going to take her to the hospital now. And so it's like, well, what is happening? What is going on? I don't know. Like, I talked to her yesterday. Anyways, so luckily my son had been super mature and vigilant. He was 20 at the time, or 21. And he had also noticed she was not responding. And he called our neighbor in the apartment complex. Luckily, the neighbor was home. He told, and had a key. He told the neighbor, go in and check on her. And the neighbor did. And while she was on the phone with him, like, she walked in the apartment and she said, oh my God, I have to call 911. And she hung up on him.
Oh,
So he was like, what is happening? So he had called my friend, which is how she ended up there already before I even talked to her, because he had already alerted her, like, get over there now, something's going on. And he didn't call me back when I had asked him about it, because later I found out he said, I didn't want you to worry because I knew you're in Portugal and there was nothing you could do until I knew what was going on. So in his like 21-year-old mind, he's saving his sister's life, solving a crisis, dealing with that emotion by himself with my friends who are also his aunties and there for him. But he's in North Florida. There's nothing he can do. He's calling in all the resources, and he's also trying to not bother me with this until he figures out what's going on. So anyways, we booked a flight. Within 6 hours, we were on a plane, and longest flight of our lives. Of course, you know, we didn't know, she wasn't responsive. She wasn't
So at
talking.
this point, you didn't even know, you didn't have any context?
I had nothing. And luckily, when she turned 18, when both my kids turned 18, I did power of attorney with them so that I would have access to their medical records. Because once your kids are 18, you can no longer have any information about their education or their medical records unless they give you permission. So we would have had no information had I not had that directive, which I was able to screenshot on my phone and send to my friend, who showed it to the doctors and said, you can tell us information to pass to her because this is proof. So thank God I had that. But for the 10-hour flight, of course, that flight did not have Wi-Fi. So we had no access to anything. So for 10 hours, we didn't know if she was dead or alive or what had happened or what. we got to Florida, we raced to the hospital, and she was in neuro ICU. They still didn't at that time know what was wrong with her. She'd been unconscious for over 24 hours at that time, not talking, not responding, nothing. But this is too long, but long story
No,
short,
it's not. I want to hear the story.
she ended up in ICU, neuro ICU for 7 days. She was eventually diagnosed with viral encephalitis, which is a brain infection. And they don't know what caused it. Still to this day, they said, we will maybe never know. It could have been a variety of things. Could have been a mosquito bite.
Yeah.
So they just don't know what caused it, but it happened within 4 days of whatever happened, because she went down very quickly.
Right.
And she finally, on like day 3, she finally opened her eyes. My husband and I were taking shifts, sleeping at the hospital with her, and she like barely opened her eyes. And I'm talking to her and I'm like, we're here, we love you. And she nodded when I said that. And that was her first movement. And so I'm like, okay, she can hear me and she understands me, because they didn't know what cognitive function or mobility. She could have been, they didn't know how long she was unconscious. And because of the timeline, it would have been a max of 16 hours that she was there, but we don't know when she fell unconscious. So they didn't know the damage, if there was brain damage or whatever.
Actually now, I mean, in the sense of going from that point to the progress of getting better.
She got better every day. Every day they had her on because they didn't know what was wrong with her initially. They thought she had a stroke, but she was healthy. They threw every possible drug at her. They had all the doctors on her. She was like an episode of House.
I was just about to say that. We just started watching House, and I'm thinking, I think that's like Gregory. Just do this, do that, do this.
It was. And they said, the doctors said that. And every doctor that came in, they were like, oh, we've heard about her. Oh, we know about you. Because they had all different kinds of doctors, because they didn't know, is it neurological? Is it hepatitis? Is it liver damage? They didn't know like where it was or what was the problem. She's a healthy 18-year-old girl who suddenly is like completely in a coma, basically. So they finally figured it out, and they had thrown every drug at her. So she started recovering, and every day, like one day she, sat up. Then the next day she like recognized people. And then she slowly came back. Like every day she had to learn to swallow again, to eat again, to walk, to talk. Her memory came back the slowest. She was not aware of who some of us were. She didn't know her age. She kept saying she was 14. Like they would ask her the same questions every day to see like where the progress was. And she was, in her mind, she was 14 for several days. But she finally, came back to, she was released from the hospital 8 or 9 days later, and she walked out of the hospital, which is crazy because I have videos of them like holding her up, and she couldn't even stand on her own. And just every day, like they were like, oh, she took 4 steps today. Oh, she took a step, like on a stair, a step up today. Like every day she made so much progress, and they attributed that to her being young and healthy. They were like, if this would happen to you, good luck. But because she was young and healthy, she recovered. She had plans to come out to Portugal anyway to visit us for the summer. She was going to stay with us for 7 weeks. And this happened about 2 weeks before she was supposed to come anyway. So when they let her out of the hospital, my main concern was, will she be allowed to fly? Is it safe for her to fly? We didn't know about her circulation. We weren't sure. She was on a anti-seizure medication because they didn't know if she had seizures that were causing anything. I was like, is that going to be a problem on the plane? So we brought her back over to Portugal with us as planned a week later than what she was supposed to be there. And she had all her therapy here. And it was honestly the best thing for her to be here because it was such a slow pace. I feel like food was healthier. She didn't have the distractions of all her friends visiting and keeping her awake, which she would entertain as a young lady. She'd be like, yeah, sure, come over. But she didn't need those people. She needed rest. So being here and having a slow pace and just sitting outside and going to the beach and being quiet, it was like the perfect recovery for her. She was here for 6 weeks. She's now back in Florida at school in an apartment by herself, fully functional. Like amazing. So
lucky girl.
Yeah,
she really is. I think for parents who are worried about sending your kids away and that for this exact thing to happen, like I can either be a cautionary tale for you and you can be like, that's why I'm not going to do it. Or
Right.
you can look at my story and say, this happened, but she had all the right things in place, which is what I would advise you if you're going to move across the world. Like, make sure you have a strong network of friends. Make sure that before you leave, you have these health directives in place and any power of attorneys in place. Make sure that you talk to the neighbors of wherever your kids are going to be and say, this is our contact information. Please contact, or that so that you can contact them. Like if our neighbor, and we had given our neighbor a key, like if our neighbor hadn't had a key to get in the apartment, I mean, EMT probably would have broke through the door, but putting these things in place can make like literally between life and death. So just have plans, have people who care about your family as much as you do, and it's okay. It's going to be okay. And I would say also, since this has happened, my son has been amazing, and my son and daughter were already close, but now they're like super close. Their schools are about 2.5 hours drive apart from each other. So he was in Chicago all summer for an internship, and when he got back just like a week ago, he's like, I need to drive down and see my sister. And I was like, you've been traveling, like take a rest. You can see her like in a couple of weeks. And he's like, no, Mom, you don't understand. The last time I saw her, she was tied up in wires. Like I haven't seen her up and moving. Like he was there for a few days, but then he had to go. So he was very anxious to see her looking healthy, which he did. And they sent us pictures, but I think we're just all as a family so much tighter because this happened and we got through it together. And I don't know.
I think here's the thing, and this is we did a podcast a few weeks ago after we experienced the first loss. And we knew that coming over here, it's the sacrifice that you're going to make. It is literally the thing that keeps me like up at night sometimes to go, okay, we're making this choice for 11,000 reasons positive. And yet you always know you're going to have sacrifices that come with that, right? And that can be very different for everybody, but the big sacrifice for us was knowing that you're making the choice to move further away from at least my family, right? Because they live in North Carolina. And that you'll miss things and you won't be able to get back for things, and you will lose people when you're gone that you can't be there for as easily as you might have if you never went, right? And we did a podcast about I lost a very, very good friend, and how painful that is in the moment when you're sitting here and you feel completely disconnected and helpless and all the things that you feel when shit goes down. But then I remember also having those moments of that's exactly why we did this.
We're doing.
Did you have some of that realization after, like, processing something like almost losing a child? I cannot even imagine at all. So I would love to hear about like how that.
To be honest, this happened, like I said, May 20th. I'll never forget that day in my life ever. But to be honest, I'm still processing it. Like I still struggle. I still literally like a week ago, I went through the videos and photos from that time in the hospital because I hadn't looked at anything since it happened. And I was like, if you don't look at this and watch this and make yourself see it and let yourself know it's okay, we're on the other side, it's okay. Because in the moment, you're just trying to survive, you're just trying to get through it. Also, by the way, I'm in another freaking country. I haven't even like processed moving abroad yet. And now I'm dealing with this. Oh. So it was like, I needed to face it and like look at it like in the face, like a monster, and say, you didn't win. It's okay. She's okay. But I'm sure I'll be processing it forever. Like I see things on TV of anyone in the hospital and I immediately start crying. And that is not something that I was ever, that's not who I am, but I still know those feelings are very raw when I like see something on TV and it chokes me up.
Can't imagine.
I do think, having I don't know. I, for parents who think like this is the worst thing, just if your kids are in college anywhere, I just say like, and all parents know this because you worry all the damn time, but like anything can happen at any time. Like this could have happened when we lived in Florida and she was in college in Gainesville, 2 hours away. And I could have gotten to her in 2 hours instead of 10, but it still would have happened. She still would have been in the ER. If your kids don't live at home with you, if your adult kids don't live at home with you, there's always the potential of something bad happening. And choosing to put your life or your dreams on hold doesn't change the potential for something bad happening. And that might sound selfish, but it's just a reality. Like my son was in Chicago all summer. If I had lived in Florida still and he was in Chicago, something could have happened to him in Chicago and I wouldn't have been there, but he's an adult and he has to live his life. And our adult kids, some people are like, oh, she's 18. That was so young to leave the country. My husband is from Trinidad. He moved out of Trinidad at 16 without his parents to come to the United States. Like he moved away at 16 and so many kids in Trinidad go to boarding school in Canada when they're 14. And it's another world away, like a long flight away, like another country from Trinidad to Canada, but they all do it. You can't like not live your life. I don't know. Kids are resilient.
Yeah,
They are.
I can speak to it from a reverse perspective. 7.5, nearly 8 years ago, I moved from England to the States. And, I had to go through that same conversation with my parents about, are you sure you don't mind me going? Because you're getting old, My dad was showing early signs of Alzheimer's and cognitive declines and various other things. And so those conversations were had, and it was a case of, look, just go and live. Just go and do what you're going to do, because if you don't, everybody will regret it. We'll feel that we've held you back, and you'll feel that we've held you back, and all of those things. And so, yeah, I went over, and that's where I met Meredith. I went over with one suitcase, and that was it. And Match.com did the rest.
Say that out loud.
Can now. And a year and a half, well, December 2 years ago, I got a phone call. I'd had like maybe 4 or 5 missed calls overnight. What the hell's this? And then as I had my phone in my hand, ready to make a phone call, my brother called to say that my dad had passed. Now that happened. It wasn't expected. Yes, he was ill, but it wasn't expected that day, that week, that month type thing. And so, to your point, even if I'd been in England and not in America, there would have been no difference as to how I could have responded.
Yeah.
I think, again, it just draws to being true to yourself as to, so long as you've got everything in place that you can possibly put in place and feel good about what that is, I think that should be enough to promote pushing forward.
I also think that you've set an example for your kids.
Yeah.
I mean, this is so, I want this podcast. I want to share different people's stories with listeners for people who are potentially thinking of doing this. And, we're never going to hit on all cylinders for every person who's listening that's in this situation, or motivated by the same things. But I can tell you right now that I do not think what you've done is selfish by any means, right? You said selfish, and immediately I thought, no, it's realistic, right? It's like, I think we can turn around that on ourselves and be like, am I being selfish? Because I know how that might feel. But like from the outside, it's like you choose to go and live for yourself, and also choose to come to Portugal because you knew it would also be good for them eventually. Yeah. There's a whole nother podcast Heather and I can do on this subject. But I just, again, I love the perspective that you're giving for people, that it's like, you can only do so much, right? If you want to teach your kids how to really live for themselves and dream pretty big, then do it yourself and do the things that you were talking about to put in place. Is there anything else? Like, you like hit on some very pragmatic, like, here are some things that I would definitely do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else or advice that you would give people who are thinking about doing what you've done with adult children in the US in mind, like you were talking about the medical directives and you were talking about, keys to access of the apartment, all that other stuff. Is there anything else that you can think of or advice that you would give someone that's like very, like, these are things that I can actually go and do and prepare and make myself feel like I've done as much as I can to prepare for the move?
I don't know. I'm pretty type A. I'm pretty organized and I'm all about like spreadsheets and stuff. Over prepared for this move in every possible way, but you can't prepare for the unexpected. So I think the biggest thing I could say is do what you can, what you know to do, and just be ready to be flexible because the best laid plans are shite. You know your kids best. Some kids at 18 are not ready to be independent. Both of my kids have worked jobs, like 20 hours a week jobs since they were 16, because they both wanted cars and we were not going to supply those for them. We were supportive in helping them get a car, but they had to pay for the stuff themselves. So they've been working jobs. They've learned about time management. They've been responsible. Both of them lived through COVID in high school, so they have learned how to be self-directed when it comes to schoolwork. So I knew that I'm not the mom that was like, "Did you do your homework?" That's not me. I'm not doing that. Like, if you don't do your homework, these are your consequences. You will go to summer school, and while all your friends are out on the boat, have fun. So that's it. That's all I'm gonna say that one time, and I'm not going to chase you around. Don't do your homework, don't do your homework, but this is what you're missing out. So my kids I know my kids, and they're super independent, super responsible, very organized. And I think I didn't really worry about them. But not every kid, kids develop at different levels. So your kid. Maybe you want to wait till your kid is a sophomore. Like we purposely waited the first year till our daughter was done because we wanted her to have friends and have a base and feel like settled. We didn't want to like have her go to college and we hightailed it out because we would have been, that would have been like a little too much change at once, I think, for all of us. So I think, timing is important. Think about what timing makes sense for your family.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Because I think that, that if I'm thinking back to when I was 18 and I went to college, like that first year was very tumultuous. Even though I was having fun, it's so much change. It's kind of like us moving to Portugal. I'm still in the freshman year of college when it comes to moving abroad. And there are some days when I just want to go home. And then there are some days where I'm like, I'm having the best time of my freaking life. I love that analogy but it doesn't, I really like that piece of advice for people who are thinking about like the timing of something. Cause you have some parents who might be like, when they hit 18, like we're going to go do what we want to do. And then you've got this other group of people who really have this dream that they want to realize for themselves. And they want to do right, obviously, by their kids too. And so what does that even look like? And it can run the gamut, right? And I know it's very individual based on kid, like what you were just saying. I do like that idea of like, timing and, how mature are your kids? Like, I don't know.
Obviously, in addition to the extraordinary happenings that have gone on for you already, do you find that there's any other struggles or any other hurdles that you've sort of felt now? I mean, whether they're because of what happened with your daughter or not, from moving as a family set, a unit as you are today, do you find any differences that you might look back on now and go, yeah, I would change that, or I'm pleased that we did this because of another reason?
Yeah, sometimes. The only people ask me, what do you miss? Like, it's silly. The thing that I really miss is our home, like our actual physical house. We really love that house. We renovated it from top to bottom, so it was exactly made to our specifications. And we had some good memories and some really bad memories, like with our kids in there too. But it was just, it was our home. So sometimes I wish, or I think, should we have rented the house instead of sold it, so that if the kids want that house back someday for themselves,
Right.
that we could have given them that house because they'll never be able to afford it.
Right.
Not in this market. Yeah, the home, like that was another reason that we had kept that apartment through the summer because our kids were like, okay, that's great, you're moving, but like, what about spring break? Where do I go for Thanksgiving? What about summers? Where am I supposed to stay? So that first summer, we had kept the plan to keep the apartment through August so that they both kids, if they came home back to our town for the summer, that they would have a place to stay that had their furniture in it that was familiar, or some of, not all their furniture because it was sold, but some things that were familiar.
Yeah.
For that place. Now that apartment is no more. They have nowhere to stay when it is other than friends, which again, that's a conversation we have with our friends. And of course, our friends are like, yes, they stay with us for Thanksgiving. Absolutely. Christmas, we hope to either be able to go back if we can get our freaking residency cards,
That was going to be a key question for you.
or we want them to come here for Christmas. Summers, we want them to come here, and I'm sure they would want to and they can bring their friends. We have a house that has bedrooms for friends. So that was why we bought this house, to have room for people to visit. So the hope is they will come here more.
Right. And you're creating a different life for them. They have the opportunity.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's an experience.
I never left the States until I was like, I don't know, mid-30s or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can say, I wish I could have, should have, whatever, but like, having parents who like lead by example like that, like, and expose their kids to the big wide world that is out here. I mean, I'm not faulting my parents, but I'm just saying it's like, my whole world was changed when we really started traveling and really started going to truly different places that are unlike anything you ever experienced growing up, and was so uncomfortable or so outlandish to your own experience that you're like, well, damn, what else is out there? That's the kind of like, it's not just, oh, my kids can come and live in Europe with me. It's bigger than that, I think.
It is. And I think a step further past that is that we, by example, have shown them that it's okay to do scary things. It's okay to do hard things, and it's okay to be uncomfortable, and it's okay to do the unexpected and try new things. And if it doesn't work, that's okay too. But just, I think, especially, I don't know, I just really, I'm proud of us making this move and them seeing that and being like, you know what, I can do anything. I can do anything. Look what my parents did. I feel like is the biggest gift of this. Like, yes, they'll get their little EU passports, and that's a pretty freaking good gift. But I think also just the gift of like you're saying, just a bigger world perspective and the knowledge that like there's no limits. Like, you can do anything at any stage in your life. It's not like you're 50, you're old, it's over. Now my kids are moving away and they've graduated and they've got jobs and they've moved to other states, and now I'm in this house, and then what? I'm just supposed to sit around and wait for grandkids. No. I'm going to have my life.
Again, moving.
Don't you know that's your role? Somebody said that was your role. Grandmother, that was right, huh?
I mean, moving from England to the States as a single person with a suitcase and starting a fresh job in a city that I knew nobody, literally not a soul. I think the only person that I knew was the realtor that I was working with in order to find me the apartment. And he was a lovely guy, don't get me wrong, but not somebody you'd want to go and hang out with. And it was just, I think, again, from my parents' point of view, my dad was in the army, so we spent a lot of my years, all of my years, really just traveling around different places. And then that kind of gave me the wanderlust to go and explore and do different things and have different adventures and live in different countries, even if it was for living in Italy for a month or Sweden or whatever. And I think that, again, opening up opportunities at whatever stage of life and whether you're thinking about children or whether you're thinking about older parents, I think the two are linked. They're just a different conversation path. But it's
people you have to care for, people you're responsible for.
Right.
Yes.
Because that whole thing changes as you go through life, the whole age perspective.
Oh yeah. I mean, I literally, I had a conversation with my parents. I mean, I'm 45 years old and
You
I
gotta
was
sit
like,
them down,
so
like,
I did.
sit
I
down.
sat them
Is it
down.
right?
Look, I'm lucky enough to have parents that I adore and who adore me. And we've always been within 4 or 5 hours of each other. Like this has been how life was. And so when we started thinking about doing this, or when we actually like started the visa process, and that day I was like, okay, I just need to like have a conversation because I needed their blessing. That's what it was. I needed their blessing. And you know what my dad says? You don't need my permission. I said, I didn't ask for permission. Those are two different things, but he knew what I meant and I knew what he meant. But I mean, I think that's what it is. I think he is sassy. I think that's what it is that you want the support, but not necessarily at the detriment of like if you're going to do it or not. Right. And that's how, you know, if you're lucky, you do get the support of the people around you. And if you're not, then that's when it becomes kind of more of a struggle of like these conversations that we're having, not that your kids gave you a struggle, but it's like that like strife of what I feel like I should do, what I'm obligated to do, what, you know, people think I should do, all of the things, you know, everybody's going to have an opinion about you and what you're doing and all the things.
The only one that matters is the
people you care about.
People you care about.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, the rest of it is just background noise.
Such a story, Heather. My gosh, though. Like, I just can't, I think that it's funny that you say I can either be a cautionary tale or, but I think that this is actually a really good story for people to hear, because I think ultimately is what it comes down to is that you can't control everything, and you being here didn't stop what happened there, and it probably wouldn't have if you were there. It's just, you know, it's just how it goes.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to know that she is doing so well. I mean, gosh,
It's a miracle, honestly.
It is a miracle. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, are there certain ways that people can connect with you that you want to highlight? I want to make sure that, like, because I'll be honest with you guys, Heather, TikTok queen. She's like my my TikTok guru.
Yeah, I have a TikTok page, which is called The Mindful Migrant, where I just kind of share my story. And I have playlists for moving to Portugal, moving abroad, moving with dogs. Like all the questions you might have are probably answered in those playlists somewhere. I just started doing consultations through Expatsy. That link to book a consultation with me is on the main page of my TikTok. So you can click that if you want to chat with me or ask questions. But I just really, I'm thankful that you invited me.
I think I can't remember when it was the first time that I saw one of your. I think it was
He found you
the very first time that I saw you. I was like, where are you living? Whereabouts is this? Because it was at the seat of sort of the coast or coastline.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where's that? Where's that? And didn't have a clue. And then obviously just through following you. But yeah, it's been a joy to watch.
Yeah.
Your commentary, because I think one of the things that we are obviously quite in line with is from political perspectives, which drives a style of living or a style of maturity toward other people, shall we say. And I think again that was another thing that I've enjoyed watching, because when somebody calls you out, it's like, okay, let's just sit down, grab a cup of coffee, because I'm going to tell you what it's
I'm
like,
going to tell you what
and go. And I love that because it's genuine, it's real, it's unedited.
My husband would wish I would edit.
Is he sitting behind the camera going, stop?
We gotta lead in a different way as a lady.
Sure. True.
Like Kamala said the other day, there was a quick little snippet of her and a little girl the other day that I saw on TikTok, and she leaned down to her and she said, "Don't ever ask permission to lead."
I
was like, God, I love her. Anyway.
A little girl asked her about like being a public speaker. I'm sure you saw this. But I
Yeah.
loved her response was like, think about you being on the Titanic and you're the only person that knows it's going down and you have something so important to say and people need to hear it. And there'll be people who don't want to hear it. And there may be people who don't want to listen to you because you're just a little girl, but you know this is important information and you've got to get it out there. So you don't care what you look like. You don't care what you sound like. You just got to get that message out. And I was like, that's such good advice. And that's how I feel like the message of being a mindful immigrant, of being respectful of the cultures that are welcoming you is such an important message. And it's not about coming to a country and just taking advantage of all the things that country has. It's also about contributing back to that country and being respectful and well, you know, if you want to be accepted, if you want to integrate and assimilate.
Yeah,
That's
no,
the way to do it.
absolutely. Totally agree.
I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather, so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Listen up, future expats. For more content about our move, the visa process, Portuguese culture and destinations, and tons of support resources for your own decisions and potential move abroad, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Portugal Junkies.
Stay in touch and help us reach more people by subscribing here and following us there.
Cheers, y'all!